You'll see.
Mark Harmon is coming back, not for a cameo, not for a crossover, not for 2 minutes at the end of an episode to remind you he exists somewhere in Alaska. Every single episode of NCIS Origins Season 3. Every one. And I honestly think this is the biggest piece of NCIS news since Gary Cole walked into the Navy Yard in 2021 and tried to fill the most unfillable shoes in the history of CBS drama. Let's talk about everything CBS just announced. What we actually know about what Gibbs is doing in Season 3, why this is genuinely different from every other appearance Harmon has made since he left, what it means for the NCIS franchise heading into fall 2026, and why the fan response to this announcement has been unlike anything this franchise has produced in years. Because there is a lot to cover here, and every single piece of it matters. First, the news itself, because it's worth being completely clear about what was actually confirmed today. CBS made the official announcement through its Instagram account, posting, "The story he never told enters a new chapter. Mark Harmon will return to NCIS. Origins is Gibbs for all episodes of Season 3. Not some episodes. Not most episodes. All of them. All 10. Every single week on screen as the older Gibbs we've been missing for 5 years, working through a present-day mystery that connects directly to his Camp Pendleton days in the early 1990s. A serialized storyline that unfolds across the entire season. Variety confirmed it separately, with CBS describing it as an action-packed story that runs all season long. And the fan comments that flooded every single platform where this was shared tell you everything you need to know about what this announcement means to the people who have been watching this show for 2 decades. So glad to have Mark back. Thank you for bringing back the original Gibbs. He's been greatly missed. Comment after comment after comment from people who never stopped wanting this. And I honestly think that fan response is the most important context for understanding why this is happening right now, at this exact moment in the franchise's history. Now let's put this in proper context. Because the history of how Harmon has interacted with this show since 2021 is more layered than most people have been tracking, and understanding that history is what makes the Season 3 announcement feel as significant as it does. He left NCIS proper in episode 4 of season 19, choosing to stay in Alaska rather than return to the agency after the case involving his old adversary Markov. And that departure genuinely felt final, not a dramatic exit, not a death. Just a man who had given everything he had to a job that cost him everything he loved along the way, choosing finally to stop. And the show let him make that choice quietly, without fanfare. The way Gibbs would have actually done it, but he never actually left the franchise. He stayed close. He's been narrating every episode of NCIS Origins as the older Gibbs since the show premiered in fall 2024, providing the voice that frames young Gibbs' story from across the decades.
There is no such thing as a clean slate.
He's been executive producing alongside his son Sean Harmon, David J. North, Michaela Greco, and NCIS Los Angeles veteran Eric Christian Olsen. He appeared on screen briefly in the Origins series premiere to establish the framing device and give the show its emotional anchor. And then in November 2025, he came back in person for a Veterans Day crossover event that was one of the most ambitious things the NCIS franchise has attempted in years. Young Gibbs, played by Austin Stowell, running a 1990s investigation on one side, older Gibbs, played by Harmon, connecting it to a present-day thread on NCIS on the other, the two timelines talking to each other across 30 years of the same man's life. And that crossover also gave us the single most charming detail about present-day Gibbs that this franchise has produced since his departure. He's still in Alaska. He's still alone in that cabin, and he now has a dog. I honestly don't know why that detail makes me as happy as it does, but it does. I honestly think that crossover was the test. Everything after it feels like the result of what the audience told the creative team about what they still needed. Executive producer David J. North told TV Insider back in May, before any of this season 3 news broke, "We know what the fans want. He so much represents what NCIS is, and I would love to see him again." And when TV Insider asked Harmon himself about the possibility of coming back in a larger capacity, he said, "I don't know." 2 words, which is the kind of answer that sounds like nothing and actually sounds like yes. When it comes from a man who has never once in his public life said more than the minimum necessary. And it turned out to be yes, a very big one. Now, let's talk about what season 3 is actually going to look like, because the structure of this is genuinely interesting and meaningfully different from anything Origins has tried before. The show has always run 2 parallel tracks simultaneously. Austin Stowell playing young Gibbs in the early 1990s at Camp Pendleton, working cases and building relationships and making the choices that shaped the man we spent 18 seasons watching on the mothership. And then Harmon as older Gibbs, framing everything in narration from the present, his voice holding the 2 timelines together without ever quite being in the same room as the story he's telling. What season 3 is going to do is collapse those 2 tracks into one continuous serialized mystery. Present-day story for Harmon that connects directly to something that happened during Gibbs's time at Camp Pendleton in the 1990s. Meaning, whatever young Gibbs is working through on the prequel side of the timeline has a direct consequence in older Gibbs's present-day scenes. They're not just parallel anymore. They're the same story happening in 2 different decades simultaneously. The Hollywood Reporter described this as something of a departure for the entire NCIS franchise, which has built its library of over 1,100 episodes across 7 series, almost entirely on procedural, case of the week structure. A season-long serialized mystery anchored by the original face of the franchise is a genuinely bold creative choice. And for a show that has always relied on the comfort of the familiar, choosing to do something structurally unusual with the most beloved character in the universe is either very brave or very confident. I honestly think it's both. And it's worth talking about the specific season 2 moment that season 3 is now going to have to reckon with head on. TV Line confirmed that the season 2 Origins finale ended with one of the most emotionally charged moments the show has produced. Young Gibbs and Lala, played by Marielle Molino, kissed for the first time, and if you've watched 18 seasons of NCIS, you know exactly why that matters. Gibbs's romantic life on the mothership was one of the franchise's great ongoing threads across 2 decades. A man who lost his first wife and daughter to violence, who carried that grief into every relationship he ever tried to build afterward, who married 3 more times and couldn't make any of them hold. Watching that pattern form in real time in the 1990s, while simultaneously watching the older version of the same man work through a connected mystery in the present. That's the kind of dual time-mailing and emotional storytelling that justifies the structure Origins has been building toward. And I honestly cannot wait to see how the show handles the distance between who young Gibbs is in that first kiss and who older Gibbs is still becoming in Alaska. There's also a piece of this announcement that I think hasn't gotten quite enough attention yet, and it's this. Season 3 has been reduced to 10 episodes from previous seasons. And I honestly think that's the right call. Not because the show couldn't fill more, but because a tighter episode count with a serialized story means there is no room to waste. Every episode has to move. Every scene Harmon is in has to carry weight. There's no procedural filler to hide behind when you've committed to one continuous story across 10 hours of television. The reduction in episode count combined with the increase in Harmon's presence is the show essentially saying, we're going for it. No safety net, no case of the week backup plan, just the most important character in the franchise's history and a mystery that's been waiting 30 years to be solved. The cast around Stowell is staying fully intact, and I think that matters enormously. Kyle Schmid, Marielle Molino, Tyla Abercrombie, Diane Rodriguez, and Caleb Foote are all returning, which means the relationships the show spent 2 seasons building around young Gibbs aren't being dismantled to make room for the Harmon storyline. They're going to coexist, which means the people who fell in love with this younger ensemble are getting everything they already had, plus the thing the original fandom has been asking for since 2021. And the production team behind all of this is worth paying attention to. David J. North is back as showrunner and executive producer. Mark Harmon is executive producing. Sean Harmon is executive producing alongside him, which means this is quite literally a father and son working together to tell the next chapter of a character the father built from the ground up in 2003. Michaela Greco is back, and Eric Christian Olsen, who spent 12 seasons as Deeks on NCIS Los Angeles before that show ended, is executive producing too. The depth of franchise knowledge in that writer's room right now is genuinely extraordinary. These are people who, between them, have lived inside this universe for a combined total of decades. And they're all working together on the same serialized story for the first time. Now I want to talk about the bigger picture, because NCIS Origins Season 3 does not exist in isolation. NCIS Season 24 is also confirmed for fall 2026, airing Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS, with Gary Cole's Parker still carrying the flag for the present-day mothership, and Origins will follow it in the new 10 p.m. slot on the same night. Which means CBS is heading into the 2026-27 television year, with Mark Harmon appearing every week on one show, while the main series continues evolving without him on another. The original Gibbs and the current NCIS running on the same network on the same night, 2 hours apart. That is not an accident. That is CBS positioning the most beloved franchise in its history as a two-front event all season long. I honestly think the strategic intent behind that scheduling decision is the single clearest sign of how seriously the network is taking this announcement. It's also worth remembering what the NCIS franchise just went through in season 23, because I think it reframes what Harmon's return means emotionally as much as it does narratively. Season 23 gave us Vance's death in the 500th episode, the most significant loss this franchise has absorbed since Gibbs drove to Alaska. It gave us Parker facing the consequences of helping arrange an extrajudicial killing. It gave us the Mateo revelation that put McGee's entire personal life into upheaval. And it ended on a gunshot in an alley with nothing resolved. Season 24 is inheriting all of that weight, And running alongside it on the same network on the same night is going to be Gibbs, the original, working through something that connects to who he was at the very beginning. The show that is still figuring out what it is without him, running parallel to the show that is going back to find out what it was with him. I honestly think that contrast is going to define what Tuesday nights feel like on CBS this fall in a way that's genuinely unprecedented for this franchise. Season 3 of NCIS Origins premieres this fall on CBS, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. NCIS Origins Seasons 1 and 2 are on Paramount Plus right now if you need to catch up. And if you haven't watched Origins at all yet, honestly, now is the moment. Because whatever story was being built across 2 seasons of Austin Stowell and Mariel Molino and the early days of Camp Pendleton is about to pay off in the biggest possible way. Mark Harmon left in 2021. He never really went anywhere, and this fall, he's coming all the way back. Drop a comment and tell me, is this the NCIS news you've been waiting for since 2021? And what do you think the present day mystery is that connects back to his Camp Pendleton days? Because I honestly think whatever they've been saving for this moment has been sitting in the writer's room for a very long time. And I cannot wait to find out what it is.